Us today for the WACARES Basics, What Employers Need to Know webinar. My name is Sam Klowicki. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager at DSHS, and I'll be the host for the webinar today. I am joined by Kristen from DSHS. If you can go ahead and quickly introduce yourselves.
All right, Kristen Mackey. I lead community relations and outreach for WACARES at DSHS.
And Jeff.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Kindle. I am a service delivery manager with Employment Security Department's Leaving Care Division.
And Marley.
Hi, I'm Marley Holbrook. I'm an employer reporting specialist with the Paid Family and Medical Leave and WACARES programs.
We will have time at the end of today's presentation for an audience Q&A where we'll answer any questions that you might have. Anybody who has joined using a computer through Zoom can answer questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We will answer them for you in chat as well as during the live Q&A. If we're unable to get to your question today, we'll respond to you via email at the email that you signed up with. The slides and a recording of today's presentation will be available on our website at wacaresfund.wa.gov/webinars after the presentation today. And we're going to go ahead and start with Kristen.
Great. Thank you, Sam. So we are going to start by defining what we are talking about when we say long-term care or caregiving. We often see a lot of confusion about this. Long-term care is help with activities of daily living like bathing, eating, dressing, preparing meals, grocery shopping, and that type of thing. It does not include medical care like doctor's visits or treatment for medical conditions. It includes a broad range of needs, which can also include younger people who have been unexpectedly injured or become disabled or ill. And a lot of people don't realize how many different services and supports are included when we talk about long-term care. A lot of people think about care in a residential setting, like a nursing home or assisted living, but it can also include care that's provided in your own home. And most people who have long-term care needs can stay in their own homes with the right support. We also see a lot of confusion from family caregivers who don't realize that they're a caregiver. You might go to your mom's house a couple times a week to cook her meals and take her to appointments and make sure that she's taken her meds. And those are all common care activities. The majority of this type of care is actually provided on an informal basis as unpaid care from family members, friends, or neighbors. 70% of us will need long-term care at some point in our lives, but the problem is that it can be really expensive. It costs almost $23,400 for 6 months of 20 hours of home care per week. And other options can be far more expensive. And it's also important to keep in mind that getting care for free from a family member is not actually free for your family either. And we'll talk about that more in a second. But because long-term care isn't medical care, it's not covered by health insurance or Medicare except in really rare circumstances. And it's only covered by Medicaid after you've spent down your life savings to just $2,000. Even though long-term care is a predictable cost, most of us don't have a way to pay for it. The median household income for Washington seniors is only $56,000 per year. And in terms of retirement savings, only 41% of Washington workers who are near retirement have 41% have no projected retirement income from a pension, 401k, or IRA, and another 42% on top of that have only enough retirement savings to replace 10% of their pre-retirement income. This is especially critical because our population is aging rapidly. The population of Washingtonians who are 85 and older is going to quadruple from 2025 to 2050. We are also seeing the caregiver support ratio decline sharply. And really all that means is that there's going to be a lot less family support available for people who are in high risk years for needing care, because there are going to be fewer people who are at a typical age to be a family caregiver for each person who is in those high risk years for needing care. And as I mentioned, while walk cares may seem like a new expense, our current system, our previous system really, where we relied almost entirely on unpaid family caregivers to provide the vast majority of care, isn't actually free for those families. Almost half of family caregivers experience a related financial setback. They spend about 25% of their own income on care-related expenses on average. And a lot of caregivers end up leaving the workforce early to provide care to a loved one. And caregivers who are 50 and older and do this lose an average of more than $300,000 in wages and benefits. The majority of caregivers work full-time on top of their care and family responsibilities, and most of them say that it impacted their job in some way. Over half say that they have to go in late or leave early or take time off to provide care. 15% had to reduce their hours. Many, about 8%, said that they received warnings about their performance or attendance, turned down promotions, or had to quit, retire, or lose their benefits. And while many caregivers do find the role rewarding, it can be really stressful. Nearly 1 in 4 report that their health has worsened since they took on the caregiving role. So, with all of these challenges in mind, the state's Joint Legislative Executive Committee on Aging and Disability started a search in 2014 for a long-term care public policy innovation to be able to address those needs, and spent several years working with stakeholders, policy experts, and actuaries to explore private and public solutions, and found that a program like Walk Cares that covers almost everyone is the only way to provide that affordable coverage. So with that in mind, in 2019, they passed the LTSS Trust Act, creating Walk Cares. There have been several improvements to Walk Cares over the years, some of which are highlighted here. In particular, some of the most recent changes have been that in 2024, the legislature gave workers the ability to take their benefit out of state. And in 2025, just earlier this year, the legislature made a few changes that I believe we'll talk about later, including creating the insurance market, a new insurance market for supplemental private policies that work with Walk Cares, and gave workers with private insurance exemptions the ability to join Walk Cares. Contributions already started back in 2023, and benefits will become available for folks who meet contribution requirements and need care in July of 2026. So let's talk about how the program works in general. It's an earned benefit, so workers have to contribute for a certain number of years in order to qualify for their benefits. It's entirely self-funded by worker contributions, which go into a dedicated trust fund used only for this program. Workers contribute 0.58% of each paycheck to Walk Cares, and you can see at the bottom left here that a typical worker who makes just over $50,000 a year contributes $291 each year, or about $24 a month. Workers only contribute while they are working. Contributions stop when they retire or if they become unemployed. Everyone is covered at the same rate, regardless of any pre-existing conditions they or their family members may have. And when it comes time to claim benefits, there's no need to worry about copays or deductibles or paying up front and then filing claims for services. Instead, the program is set up so that we connect beneficiaries with contracted providers who offer the services that they want, and we pay those providers directly. And this is just a quick overview of what those contributions can look like over a worker's career. The typical income that I mentioned is right here in green in the middle. That $50,000 a year salary is about $290 in contributions each year, which totals out at $8,700 over 30 years. Then for qualifying for benefits, the first thing that you have to do is to meet the contribution requirement. And there are several different ways that folks can do that. Everyone who contributes to Walk Cares more than 500 hours per year is earning benefits, and that includes part-time and temporary workers. And so those three pathways for meeting the contribution requirement, the first one is lifetime access. This is the pathway that we expect the majority of Washington workers will use to qualify for benefits. And all workers have to do is contribute for at least 10 years. This pathway was simplified a little bit with the legislative changes this year. So as long as the worker contributes for 10 years at any point in their career, they can earn access to the full benefit amount, which is $36,500 and will grow over time with inflation. The next pathway is early access, and this is for workers who haven't yet been able to earn lifetime access, but have a care need, maybe while they're working or soon after they leave work. And to qualify for this pathway, you need to have contributed for at least 3 of the past 6 years at the time you apply for benefits. And this pathway also earns you access to the full benefit amount of $36,500. Then finally, we have a special pathway just for people who are near retirement. If you were born before 1968 and are therefore near retirement right now as the program is beginning and may not be able to qualify for that 10-year pathway, you can earn 10% of the full benefit amount for each year that you work. So for example, if you work and contribute 500 hours or more per year for 3 years, you would earn 30% of the benefit amount, which is just under $11,000, again, adjusted for inflation. And near retirees will have permanent access to that prorated benefit amount at any time that they need care. And if they meet the requirements for one of the other pathways, they can also access the full benefit through those pathways. Once workers meet contribution requirements and need help with at least 3 activities of daily living, they get access to their benefit amount, which again, the full amount is $36,500, which they can use for any combination of services and supports that they would like. So workers, beneficiaries get the flexibility to choose the services and supports that meet their need and their family's needs. So that could mean, like we talked about, residential care or in-home care, but we do also cover things like home modifications to make your home safer, personal emergency response systems, or nutritious meals delivered to your house, transportation to appointments. So really a lot of different services that are really designed to help people stay at home, live at home independently for longer. Walk Cares also has a lot of services that provide additional support for family caregivers. So beneficiaries can choose someone who would otherwise be caring for them on an unpaid basis to get training and be paid, even their spouse. And in addition to paying them for their time, Walk Cares also offers other resources for family caregivers, including things like respite care and other support services. We get asked a lot about how far that benefit amount will go. It is a lifetime benefit amount. And while it won't cover 100% of care for everyone, It will cover the amount of in-home care that the average Medicaid client uses for roughly a year. And about a third of people need care for a year or less. So for those people, depending on what services they need, Walk Cares may be able to cover all the care that they need. And for everyone else, Walk Cares provides the family with immediate relief and time to plan for future care costs. So these are 3 examples of how someone might use their benefit. They could have a paid family caregiver, get that care for about 10 hours a week for 2 years, and get care supplies, all for a total of $34,800. Or they could choose services to help them stay safely in their own home. They could purchase $8,000 worth of renovations, like adding a wheelchair ramp and widening doorways to improve their home's accessibility. They could get a personal emergency response system, including 3 years of services, and have meals delivered for 3 years for around $36,000. And then finally, someone who needs long-term care because they had an unexpected injury could get 20 hours of in-home care per week for 6 months, plus an environmental modification to their home, like a wheelchair ramp and safety equipment, for about $28,900. We also highlighting again the legislative change that was made last year is allowing workers the ability to take their benefit out of state. And this is a major concern that we heard from workers previously. So we're glad to be able to allow workers who want to continue participating in Walk Cares who leave the state to do so, as long as the worker has contributed to Walk Cares for at least 3 years, working 500 hours or more per year, and they opt in within a year of leaving Washington. They will be able to continue participating starting in July 2026. They will keep contributing during their working years, and then they will be able to access benefits in other states outside Washington starting in July 2030. And then I want to just give you an overview of the way that we have responsibilities divided between agencies. You may have noticed in our introductions that we have folks from several state agencies here. We are a cross-agency program. So just so you have a sense of who does what, ESD is in most cases for employers going to be the right place to go. They can answer questions about premiums and reporting, managing employee exemptions, or self-employed individuals who would like to opt in. And then DSHS will be the lead agency, particularly for benefits. We will be the agency that folks work with as they are applying for benefits and getting an assessment of their care needs. And then we also have some responsibilities for HCA, for paying providers. And the Office of the State Actuary is responsible for ongoing analysis to make sure that we stay on solid ground financially. And then just a couple more, the most recent updates to share with you that were made in legislative session this year. First of all, as mentioned, there is going to be a supplemental private long-term care insurance market created. The Office of the Insurance Commissioner will be completing rulemaking that will be complete by May 1st of 2026. And what this part of the law does is create new standards for those private supplemental policies that will be designed to work seamlessly with Walk Cares. So that's a really similar structure to how Social Security or Medicare work, where you have public insurance that provides a foundation of financial security for everyone. And then those private options are available for folks who want to get more coverage. Because Walk Cares benefits are able to cover the deductible for those private policies, insurers would be able to offer supplemental plans that are much more affordable and therefore increasing access to long-term care coverage for Washingtonians. So that's helpful information if you have workers who have asked about the benefit amount in particular. And then a couple other things that may be of interest. As I mentioned, the law provides an opportunity for everyone who has a private long-term care insurance exemption right now to cancel their exemption and join the program. In particular, we have heard from folks who are near retirement before the near retiree pathway was added, who now would like to opt back in. And folks who are in this situation can decide to participate in walk cares. That will become effective January 1st of 2026. We also have that simplified 10-year contribution requirement, as I mentioned on the pathways to meeting the contribution requirement slide. Then a few additional changes for individuals who hold non-immigrant visas. Temporary workers are automatically exempt from the program now unless they notify their employer that they would like to participate in the program. So automating that exemption process for that category of worker. And the law also creates an optional exemption for active duty service members who also work a civilian job in Washington. And then, of course, we have an existing exemption opportunity as well for spouses of active duty service members. That new exemption becomes available as well on January 1st of 2026. And with that, I will hand it over to ESD.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to be talking a little bit about exemptions, and then we'll have Marley come in and talk to you a little bit about employer requirements. But I am going to mention that the major responsibilities of employers are to manage exemptions, withhold premiums, and report and pay them quarterly. Employers don't contribute money on behalf of themselves. It's fully funded by the employee, but they are required to maintain a record of exempt employees. They are required to collect premiums for those non-exempt employees, as well as report employee hours and wages and remit premiums to ESD quarterly. The definition of employer, employee, and remuneration are consistent with the paid leave program, as well as the definition of wages also applies, excluding the Social Security tax cap, which does not apply to walk years. Next slide. All right. So as Kristen kind of mentioned in one of her previous slides, for the private insurance exemptions, those were originally permanent exemptions. And the law states that we can't accept these applications after December 1st of 2022. And there were no exceptions to those dates built into the law. But the new bill, ESSB 5291, was signed into law in May of 2025, which made some changes to the walk cares exemptions effective 1/1 of 2026. And I'm going to be outlining those changes in the next few slides. But individuals who have existing permanent exemptions because they attested that they had private long-term care insurance may rescind their exemption and participate in the program. Individuals must notify ESD that they wish to rescind their exemption and can only do so between January 1st of 2026 through June 30th of 2028. ESD is required to consider partial years worked towards qualified individual status if the rescission happened mid-calendar year. Next slide. So as far as employee exemptions goes, there's a few different pathways, but in general, employees have 90 days to inform ESD and their employer once they no longer qualify for any of the conditional exemptions. And the circumstances under which their exemptions must be canceled by notification to ESD and their employers are Their spouse or registered domestic partner is separated from military service, and the marriage and or partnership is dissolved. The other is their immigration status changes and they become a permanent resident and no longer qualify for the work visa exemption, or they change their permanent residence to within the state of Washington if they have the out of state exemption. Uh, there are still two permanent exemptions. One is for veterans with a 70% or greater service connected disability, and the other is for the exemption for long term care, that policy that they already had. But like I just mentioned, coming January 1st of 2026, that window will open where they can opt back into the program and cancel their long term care policy should they choose. And active duty U.S. Armed Forces performing off duty civilian employment as an employee of an employer, they may voluntarily be exempt, but they would have to apply for that exemption for outside their normal military work. For any civilian work, they would still have to, for example, an active duty member of the Army who works nights as a waiter at a local restaurant may apply for the voluntary exemption. All righty, next slide. So managing the exemptions. So it's important to note that the effective date is in the letter. So when your employee provides the letter to the employer saying that they're exempt, it will have the date at which they are considered exempt by us. It's always the first day of the following quarter. And once the employee provides the approval letter to the employer, and the effective date of the exemption has passed, the employer must stop withholding premiums. If the employer continues to withhold premiums, the employer must return the premiums to the employee. Employers are not required to stop withholding premiums until they receive a copy of the letter from the employee. So in other words, an employee stating that they're exempt it is not good enough. They would have to provide a copy of the letter with the effective date. And I think with that, we're going to go to the next slide. And Marley is going to take over with some additional sort of employer information for you. Take it away.
Hello. So we're just going to talk about premiums and reporting a bit. So WellCare's premiums for employees are calculated at a flat rate of 0.58% of the employee's gross wages, and this excludes any tips. All Washington employees are required to participate in the program unless they have an approved exemption on file. These exemptions are done on an individual basis. They're completed by the employee, and the employees are required to provide the letter to you with the effective date before you stop collecting the WellCare's premiums. Employees are responsible for the full premium. Although employers are not required to pay any share of the contributions for the employees, employers can choose to. If you want to pay it on the employee's behalf, you can. And then most requirements for reporting are the same between WellCare's and paid leave. Two key differences. Again, there's no Social Security wage cap for WellCare's premiums. And there are also no employer voluntary plans for the WellCare's fund like there are for paid leave. Have the next slide, please. So you file for both programs with the same report. WellCare's is included with your paid leave reporting. There's no need to create a new account or a separate report. You use your existing Secure Access Washington, or SAW, account for reporting and payment. Beginning back with Q3 2023 reporting, the version 8 file specifications incorporate everything that's required for WellCare's. In addition to each employee's wages and hours, we now need the employee's date of birth and their WellCare's exemption status, which will be a Y, an N, or blank. I want to emphasize that if the exemption status field is blank, we do assume that employee is participating in the WellCares program, and we will assess a premium for that employee based on the reported gross wages. And that's regardless of their status. It is dependent on how you report. This is a common reason for discrepancies in employer WellCares accounts, so definitely watch out for it. And you can find all the current reporting specifications in the CSV template on the Paid Leave website. And the next slide, please. Thanks. The filing method that you use for your report is determined by how many employees you're reporting for. You can report manually for up to 50 employees. If you have more than 50, we do require a file upload. And again, the CSV template and filing specifications can be found on paidleave.wa.gov. There's also a spot where you could test your file before submitting it. If you do that, make sure you remove any identifying employee data because this is not a secure spot like in SAW. And we've got the screenshot here from the wage reporting screens where you select the year and the quarter you're reporting for, and then choose the radio button for either no payroll, file upload, or manual entry. And this is where you report the no payroll if you had no employee hours and wages to report for that quarter. As of Q3 2023, you're required to file the no payroll report, even if you do not have wages in a quarter. And the next slide, please. Payments. Payments for WellCares and paid family and medical leave must be made separately. Even though it's the same report, the payments are mailed to different addresses because they go to separate funds and they are processed by completely different payment vendors. We can accept payment by ACH, check or money order, or credit card. You could download a payment coupon with the mailing address from your account if you need to mail a check, or you can also find coupons in the Employer Wage Reporting and Premiums Toolkit, which you could find in our online help center. And again, payments are mailed to a different address. So if you do notice that your payment was applied to the wrong account, just give us a call or email us and you can request a payment transfer and we'll get that into the right spot. Okay, and the next slide, please. So I recommend downloading a copy of that Employer Reporting and Premiums Toolkit on our website, and we'll post a link to that in the chat. But you just go to paidleave.wa.gov, click on the Help Center up on the top there, and then click on Employers. And if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll find documents and the toolkit there. You'll also find an employee benefit toolkit that goes over some information that you can get from the website. And just want to make sure you give us a call if you need help accessing your account, if you have any questions about balances or transactions, or you need any help with reporting. Email us at paidleave@esd.wa.gov. And we just got some instructions there to make sure that your emails get to the right team quickly. Include UBI in the subject line and with your UBI and the business or your business name if you don't have that handy. And next slide, please. And so more information that you can find. Two websites, the WellCaresFund.wa.gov has information specific to WellCares. And if you want to find information more on the reporting side, you'll go to paidleave.wa.gov. And you can find a lot of information on both websites there. And there'll be some links. And the next slide, please. And additional information, there's WellCares email newsletters that come out frequently. Looks like monthly updates, event announcements. You'll get notifications when new resources are available. And another great resource is the ESD employer newsletter. And you'll see updates on WellCare in there and more information on paid leave and unemployment insurance. And the next slide, please. All right, I'm going to hand it back over. Thank you.
Thanks, Marley. So now we will move on to the audience Q&A section. If you do have a question, you can add it in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So the first question is an owner who is also a W-2 employee exempt from paying into WellCares since they're a business owner?
I apologize. I lost sound for a minute. I heard that it might have been a question from my end.
Oh, you're okay. It was is a business owner exempt from paying into WellCares if they're a W-2 employee?
It depends on the business type. If it's a corporation, they're considered an employee. If it's an LLC, they're considered self-employed. But I really recommend going to the website and just to search self-employed, and there's a drop down on there, and there's a a list and some information about who would be considered self-employed. So it's different situations for everybody.
Are nonprofits employees exempt?
Nonprofit status isn't, so I would again, go look on the website. If it's a nonprofit corporation, then you would be considered an employee.
Can you mail in your report with a payment?
No, please do not do that. If you absolutely have zero access to the internet or to a computer, contact us and we'll see if there's something, that we could do in that avenue. But I would not recommend that to get your report filed timely. It's not going to go to reporting. It's going to go to our payment vendor typically.
Are tips the only exclusion for wages that count?
I believe so,
Thanks,
Jeff.
question. Oh, you're muted, Jeff.
Apologies. If whatever you're currently reporting for PFML wages, it'd be the exact same for WellCares, and currently tips are excluded.
Do active duty military and military spouses receive automatic exemptions, or do they have to apply for exemptions?
So the active duty military personnel do not need to apply. And I'm gonna have to double check on the spouses. They may have to file a conditional. I think that's a conditional exemption, but I can verify.
What happens to a worker's contributions if they don't use benefits? Kristen, do you have?
So, WellCares is an insurance program. Works like an insurance program rather than a savings account. So everyone contributes at that same low rate, and then the folks who need care are able to get it if they meet the contribution requirements and need care. Like any other insurance program, if you end up not needing care, then you don't end up using your benefits.
What are the reporting requirements? Is there a specific timeline for reporting?
It's the exact same as paid leave, so there's no changes.
Are the PFML and WellCares account numbers the same?
It is it is the same account. Yeah, the same employer account.
Sorry, everyone keeps adding questions in and it keeps moving my spot on here. I have employees that have several classifications. Some are hourly, some are training. that get paid per hour per unit, does that income get included in WACARES?
All of their hours and wages will be included. Yeah.
You're an employer and you find out that your employee no longer qualifies for their exemption, what should you do if the employee doesn't notify you?
You can feel free to let us know, and we can institute some fact finding to determine on our end with the employee whether or not the condition in which they originally applied for their exemption still applies, and if not, we can rescind or rescind it. You can feel free to let us know. You would still continue to not withhold premiums until you're provided the letter saying that it no longer applies.
Does an employer have a responsibility to notify employees at hire if that they will be paying into the WACARES fund?
No, I don't know of anything specific. No, I mean, I think it's going to be the same as for paid leave.
If someone lives in Oregon but works for an organization in Washington, do they have to pay?
If they're working in Washington, then yeah, they're considered a Washington employer. I'd recommend for a specific situation though that somebody contact us and they could ask about localization.
If it's someone working in Washington but living in Oregon, though, do you want to give a little recap of the exemption for folks who live out of state?
Yep, I can definitely do that. If somebody works in the state of Washington and let's say lives in Portland, they can request an exemption based off of their out-of-state status. And at that point, they can provide the letter to the employer and they're exempt, and then premiums would no longer be withheld. If for any reason they move back into the state of Washington, the employee is required to notify ESD within 90 days, and we would rescind the exemption and provide a letter to that extent, at which point they would provide that to the employer. At that point, the employer would stop withholding premiums. Or start withholding premiums, sorry. They would start withholding premiums.
Do employees who work less than 500 hours a year have to contribute since they're not eligible for the benefit?
Yeah, all Washington workers are going to be contributing.
Is there an exemption for Oregon residents? You kind of just answered this, working in Washington. Can you go back, Kristen, go over the legislative update slides again?
Absolutely. Let me just scroll back here. Sorry to make everyone nauseous. Well, so these are were there any particular things or just another quick look at the changes?
Just a quick overview of the changes again.
Okay, so this year, this legislative session, these are the changes that were made. So creating that supplemental private long-term care insurance policy so that private insurers can offer policies that work seamlessly with WACARES that'll be cheaper because we cover the deductible and provide some additional consumer protections. This May date is when the Office of the Insurance Commissioner will complete rulemaking. And then Jeff talked a bit about the opportunity for exempt workers to rescind their exemption and participate in the program. That becomes effective January of next year. Simplifying the 10-year contribution requirement is simply adjusting the 10-year contribution pathway that we talked about so that workers can get those 10 years that they need to meet the requirement at any point in their career. And then the exemptions for a non-immigrant visa holder is just automating that instead of requiring them to fill out applications and go through the process. And then we have that new optional exemption for active duty service members who have a civilian job as well. And then just in case you're interested in it, we'll just flip back real quick to taking benefits out of state. This was last legislative session, but we still get a lot of folks who are not aware of this change yet. So this just means that starting July of next year, any workers who leave the state can continue participating in walk cares and eventually get benefits outside of Washington. They don't have to be a resident to get their walk cares benefits.
Thank you. How can part-time workers verify, or how do we verify that part-time workers have worked 500 hours to qualify for benefits?
It would be captured in your quarterly report as far when you report your wages and hours for those employees. That's where it would be captured.
Is there somewhere you can estimate your contribution and figure out the calculations for how much you contribute?
Yeah, there's an estimator on the website. You just go to paidleave.wa.gov, and at the top under employers, there's a drop down. And I think number 3 on there is estimate your paid leave payment. And it's that the calculator is spot on. I would definitely recommend doing that. It breaks down the walk cares as well.
And if you're interested from the employee side, we also have a calculator for workers who can just estimate their own contribution and see how that maps out over their career and see how their benefit amount will grow with inflation. And we can drop maybe a link to that in chat.
Are there additional costs for those who earn higher salaries?
It's the same percentage of wages regardless. So there's not the more you make, the higher the premium, but it's the same percentage as it's the same percentage for everybody.
Yeah, the only difference is just not the Social Security cap, but other than that, yeah, it's going to be the same.
Are the years based on a calendar year since the program contribution started in July? Does July through December in the first year count as 1 year?
Not sure. Correct me if you have more updated info on this, Jeff and Marley, but my understanding is that we're still finalizing those details, but at this point, it is likely to be calendar year. So July through December of 2023 would be a first year. Folks who work 500 hours during that time would have earned a qualifying year.
If you only work 5 years, will you be eligible for 50% of the benefit?
So shall we backtrack to the pathways slide real quick, perhaps?
Yes.
I know this is a lot of things to keep in your brain at one time. So the only group that gets that kind of a prorated benefit are the near retirees, which is the column way over on the right here. So if you were born before 1968, then you do get a prorated benefit since you are kind of starting this program with everybody else right now where you're near retirement and you might not be able to contribute for those 10 full years. So you get 10% of the benefit amount for every year that you work that you have permanent access to. For workers who were not born before 1968, you need to work for 10 years, don't have to be consecutive years, but at some point in your career, have 10 qualifying years that you've contributed to Walk Cares in order to earn access to the full benefit on a permanent basis. If you haven't earned that access on a permanent basis, but you do need care at a point where you maybe are still working or just recently stopped working, where you have contributed for at least 3 of the last 6 years when you're applying for benefits, then you can also get access to that full benefit amount. It's just temporary access, essentially.
Thank you. If an employee no longer qualifies for their exemption, are they required to start contributing, or do they have to opt back in?
Nope, they would be required to notify, one of the conditions of the conditional exemptions is that they notify us of any change in their condition. And if the condition that warranted the exemption in the first place no longer exists, they have to notify us and we issue the letter. They provide that to the employer, who then starts withholding premiums on their behalf. Unless they actually qualify for a different conditional waiver, which could potentially happen. But in which case they would apply for the new conditional exemption and get an approval letter as well. So there's a couple of different paths there.
Can an exempt employee be refunded if they did not know they were eligible for an exemption? So if they've already started making contributions and then they find out they're exempt?
No, the exemption would only kick in, once they apply for it and receive it. At that point, any time after they provided the letter to their employer, if that employer continues to withhold premiums, they would be eligible for a refund for anything past the time in which they provided the letter to the employer. But that's the only way a refund would come into play.
Do you have to include exempt employees on your reporting?
You do, and you have to indicate that they're exempt. So it's going to be, there's no difference from the paid leave report. It's the same report. And so you're just going to indicate on there if they are or not exempt.
Kristen, is there a maximum of the benefit amount?
Yes, that amount that we talked about, the $36,500 benefit for the full amount, it's a lifetime benefit. So once you have received that amount of services, then you will be out of Walk Cares benefits.
Is there a penalty for failure to notify for an expired exemption?
Currently, no, but penalties and interest are something that's being looked at now for the Walk Cares program. So I would say that eventually there could be, but currently, no, there's not.
Can employees who miss the deadline to opt out now opt out? Or if they miss the deadline for the exemption? Yeah.
So there are really no deadlines for the only one that had a deadline was the for those folks that have a long-term care policy in place and they attested to that. That's the only one that had a deadline that it closed. And that's actually reopening January 1st for people to be able to opt back in if they so choose. But no other exemptions have a deadline. So that it wouldn't apply. They can apply at any time.
And in January, it's not to continue, it's not opening back up just for clarity, for folks
Oh,
to
yes.
continue opting out with private insurance exemptions. That's for folks who already opted out and who want to come back in.
Thank you for that.
We have time for just a couple more. I see a lot of questions about if the recording and the slides are available. Both the recording and the slides will be available on our website at wacaresfund.wa.gov/webinars. The slides are up there right now, and then the recording will be there by the end of the day today. And then as a reminder, if we did not get to your question, we will follow up via email at the email that you registered for the webinar with. So obviously there's a lot of questions, and if we didn't get to you, we will make sure that we reach out to you. The last one is, Kristen, if you retire and move out of state, will your benefits still be paid in another state? Or do you have to meet the 10-year contribution requirement for your benefits to be paid?
Yeah, so like we talked about, I'm just skipping back on to, whoops, went too far to that slide. Folks who decide to continue participating in the program after they leave the state, they will be able to get those benefits outside the state, but they do need to continue participating just like other workers who stay in Washington, and they will use those same contribution pathways to qualify for benefits. So they have to meet the same contribution requirements. They either need to contribute for 10 years total, or the 3 of the last 6 years that gets you temporary access, or if they're a near retiree, then they can get that prorated benefit. So it's the same pathways.
And then the last question for ESD is, what information is an employer required to share about the changes to legislation with their employees? Or is it the employee's responsibility to have an understanding of the program?
While I don't believe there is a legal obligation for an employer to provide updated information to their employees, I mean, personally, I think it's a good practice, but it is ultimately on the employee to know about the program and if they want an exemption, things of that nature, and any updates that could potentially affect them.
Great. Kristen, if you could go to the last slide. Thank you all for joining us today. As a reminder, as I just mentioned, the webinar materials are available on our website. And then you can use the phone numbers here to contact both ESD and DSHS. For employer exemptions and payroll questions, you can contact ESD at that 833 number. And then if you have any other general questions about the program, you can contact DSHS at the 844 number. And we will try and respond to you all via email at the emails that you registered with. We do have a webinar next month, WellCare's Basics for Providers. If you're interested, if your organization is interested in providing a service and becoming a provider, that would be a good one for you to attend. Information for registration for that is available on the same website page as the materials from today's webinars. And besides that, I hope everybody has a good day, and thank you all for joining.